Get ready for bed, Shoshana. So the question is, are you comfy?
Yes.
All right. So now I want to read you a bedtime story. Have you ever heard of The Little Prince before tonight?
Yes.
Did you know it was called Le Petit Prince?
Yes.
I didn't know that until now. All right. Well, it seems like you're ready to get started, so you ready for chapter 1?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. I'm not ready yet. Good night, Shoshana. Love you. When I was 6 years old, I saw once a splendid picture in a book about the virgin forest called Stories of Life. It represented a boa snake that swallowed a wildcat. This is the copy of the drawing. The book said, boa snakes swallow their prey whole without chewing it, that they can no longer move, and they sleep during the 6 months of their digestion. And then I thought a lot about the adventures in the forest. On my turn, I managed with a colored pencil to make the first drawing. My drawing number 1 looked like this. And there's a picture of a rock or a slug or something like that. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them if my drawing frightened them. They answered, why should anyone be frightened by a hat? My drawing did not represent a hat. It represented a boa snake that digested an elephant. Oh, I got it. Then they drew the inside of the boa snake so that the grown-ups could understand. They always needed explanations. My drawing, number 2, looked like this. And there's more of an elephant inside of the snake. The grown-ups advised me to put aside the drawings of open or closed boa snakes and to become rather interested in geography, history, calculation, and grammar. This is how I gave up at the age of 6 a magnificent career as a painter. I had been discouraged by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. The grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and for children, it's tiresome always giving them explanations. So I had to choose another profession, and I learned how to pilot airplanes. I flew around the world, and geography, that's right, helped me a lot. I recognized at first glance China and Arizona. This is useful if you were lost at night. So I had in my lifetime a lot of contacts with a lot of serious people. I've lived a lot at the house of grown-ups. I saw them very closely. It has not improved, in my opinion, very much. When I met one who seemed a little bit lucid, I experienced it on my drawing number 1 that I always kept. I wanted to know if that person had really understood, but the person always answered, it's a hat. Then I did not talk to that person about boa snakes, neither virgin forests nor stars. I put myself on the same level. I talked about bridge, golf, politics, and neckties, and the grown-up was glad to know that another rational man. Chapter 2. Thus I lived alone, without anyone to talk to indeed, until a crash in the Sahara Desert 6 years ago. Something had broken in my engine, and as I had neither a mechanic nor passengers with me, I prepared to do, by myself, a difficult repair. For me, it was a matter of life or death. I had scarce water to drink for 8 days. The first night, I went to sleep on the sand thousands of miles far from any inhabited land. I was much more isolated than a shipwreck on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So you can imagine, to my surprise, at the sunrise, what a funny little voice woke me up. It said, please, draw a sheep for me. What? Draw a sheep for me. I jumped up to my feet, and as if I had been struck by lightning, I rubbed my eyes. I looked attentively, and I saw a quite extraordinary little fellow who looked at me seriously. This is the best portrait that, later, I managed to make of him. And here's a portrait. But my drawing, of course, is much less charming than the model. It is not my fault. I had been discouraged by my career as a painter by the grown-ups at the age of 6, and I did not learn how to draw except closed boa snakes and open boa snakes. I looked at that apparition with wide eyes and astonished. Do not forget that I was thousands of miles far from any inhabited region. My little fellow did not seem lost, neither dead, tired, nor hungry, thirsty, or scared to death. He did not have the appearance of a child lost in the middle of the desert, thousands of miles far from any inhabited region at all. While I was finally able to speak, I told him, "But what are you doing here?" And he repeated very slowly, as if it was a very serious thing, "Please draw a sheep for me." When a mystery is too impressive, we do not dare to disobey. And absurd as that seemed to me, 1,000 miles far from all the inhabited places and in danger of death, I took out of my pocket a piece of paper and a stylograph. But I remembered that I had studied mainly geography, history, calculation, and grammar. And I tell that little fellow, with a little bit of bad mood, that I did not know how to draw. He answered me, "It doesn't matter. Draw a sheep for me." And I had never drawn a sheep. I remade for him one of the 2 drawings that I was able, that one of a closed boa snake. And I was stunned to hear the little fellow answer me, "No, no, I want an elephant in a boa snake." A boa snake is very dangerous, and an elephant is very cumbersome. At home, everything is tiny. I need a sheep. Draw a sheep for me. So I drew it. He looked carefully then. "No, this one is already very sick. Make another." I draw another. My friend kindly smiled with indulgence. "See, it's not a sheep, it's a ram. It has horns." So I remade the drawing again. But it was refused as the previous ones. "This one is too old. I want a sheep that lives long." Then, with no patience, as I was eager to start disassembling my engine, I scribbled this drawing here, which is a box with 3 holes in it. And I drew, and I said, "This is a box. The sheep you want is inside it." But I was very surprised to hear my young judge's face light up. "That's quite like what I wanted. Do you think the sheep will need a lot of grass?" "Why?" "Because at home everything is tiny." "That is probably enough. I gave you a little sheep." He tilted his head to the drawing. "Not so little. Hey, it fell asleep." And that is how I met the little prince. Chapter 3. It took me a long time to understand from where he came. And the little prince, who asked me a lot of questions, never seemed to understand mine. The words spoken by chance, little by little, are the ones revealing me everything. Thus, when he saw my plane for the first time, I will not draw my plane. It's a too complicated drawing for me. He asked me, "What is that thing there?" "That's not a thing. It flies. It's a plane. It's my plane." And I was proud to explain to him that I flew. And he exclaimed, "How? How did you fall from the sky?" "Yes," I said modestly. "Ah, it is funny." And the little prince had a nice burst of laughter that irritated me a lot. I wanted my misfortunes to be taken seriously. Then he added, "Then you also come from the sky. What planet are you from?" I immediately saw a gleam in the mystery of his presence, and I asked abruptly, "So do you come from another planet?" But he did not answer me. He nodded softly while watching my plane. "It's true that on that you can't come from far away." And he sank into a daydream that lasted long. Then, taking my sheep out of his pocket, he immersed himself in the contemplation of his treasure. You imagine how much I had been intrigued by this half-confidence on the other planets, and I therefore struggled to learn more. "Where are you from, my little fellow? Where is your home? Where do you want to take my sheep to?" He replied after the meditative silence, "Which is good, with the box you gave me. I mean, overnight it will serve as a house. Of course, And if you are nice, I will also give you a rope to tie it during the day, and a picket. Whatever a picket is. The proposal seemed to shock the little prince. Tie it? What a funny idea. But if you do not tie it, it will not go anywhere, and it will be lost. My friend had a new burst of laughter. But where do you want it to go? Anywhere. Right in front of it. Then the little prince observed severely, It doesn't matter. My home is very small. And with a bit of melancholy, perhaps he added, right in front, nobody can go far away. Chapter 4. Oh, before I go into chapter 4, I'm going to take another sip. Thus I had learned a second very important thing, that his home planet was not much larger than a house. It could not surprise me much. I knew that outside of the big planets like Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, which have been given names, there are hundreds of others that are sometimes so small that it is very hard to see them through the telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of them, he gives it a number as a name. He calls it, for example, Asteroid 325. I have serious reasons to believe that a planet where the little prince came from is asteroid B612. This asteroid was seen only through the telescope in 1909 by a Turkish astronomer. Then he made a great demonstration of his discovery at an international conference of astronomy. However, nobody believed him because of his costume. The grown-ups are like that. Fortunately, for the reputation of asteroid B612, a Turkish dictator imposed on his people, on pain of death, to dress like the Europeans. The astronomer remade his demonstration in 1920 in a very elegant garment, and this time everybody accepted his opinion. If I had told you these details on asteroid B612 and gave you its number, it's because of grown-ups. Grown-ups like digits. When you talk to them about a new friend, they never ask you the essential. They never tell you which is the sound of his voice. What are the games that he prefers? Does he collect butterflies? They ask you, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? What is his weight? How much money does his father make? Only then they believe him and they know him. If you tell the grown-ups, I saw a nice red brick house with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof, they do not get to imagine this house. It is very necessary to tell them, I've seen 100,000 francs house. Then they exclaim, it's so beautiful. Then if you tell them, the evidence of that this little prince existed is that he was charming, he laughed, he wanted a sheep. When you want a sheep, it is the evidence that you exist. They will shrug and treat you as a child. But if you tell them the planet where he came from is asteroid B612, then they will be convinced, and they will leave you free of the questions. They are like that. It is not their fault. Children must be very indulgent to the grown-ups. But of course, we, who understand life, we make fun of numbers. I would like to start this story like a fairy tale. I would like to say, once upon a time, a little prince who lived in a planet not much bigger than him, and who needed a friend. For those who understand life, it would have seemed much more real. Because I do not like people reading my book recklessly. I feel such sorrow to tell these memories. It is already 6 years since my friend went to this sheep. If I am here trying to describe him, it is not to forget him. It is sad to forget a friend. Everyone has not had a friend. Then I became like a grown-up who is not interested in digits anymore. So yet, that's why I bought a color box and a pencil box. It is hard for me to get back to the drawing, at my age, when you have never made any other attempts besides that one of a closed boa and an open boa at the age of 6. Of course, I will never try to make portraits the most similar as possible, but I am not absolutely sure that I will succeed. A drawing goes, and the other is not similar anymore. I am a little wrong about the size as well. Here is the little prince. Here the little prince is too big. He is too small. I also hesitate on the color of his costume. Then I grew up like this and like that as best as possible. Finally, I was wrong about some details more important. But he has to forgive me for that. My friend never gave explanations. Maybe he thought I was too similar to him. But unfortunately, I do not know how to see sheep through boxes. Maybe I'm a little like the grown-ups. I must have got older. Almost ready for chapter 5. Every day I learned something about the planet, the departure, the trip. It came slowly, random thoughts. It was so that on the third day I knew the drama of the baobabs. This time again, it was thanks to the sheep, because suddenly the little prince asked me, as taken by a serious doubt, "Is it true that sheep eat bushes, isn't it?" "Yes, it's true." "Ah, I am happy." I did not understand why it was so important that the sheep eat bushes, but the little prince added, "Therefore, do they eat baobabs?" I pointed out to the little prince that the baobabs are not bushes, but trees as large as churches, and that even if he took with him a whole herd of elephants, the herd would not overcome a single baobab. The idea of the herd of elephants made the little prince laugh. They should be one over the other. But he noticed with wisdom, the baobabs, before growing, they start being small. "That's right. Why do you want your sheep to eat the little baobabs?" He answered me, "Well, see," as if this were evident. And it took me a lot of mental effort to understand only this problem. And indeed, on the planet of the little prince, there was in all planets good plants and weeds. Therefore, good seeds of good plants and bad seeds of weeds. But the seeds are invisible. They sleep in the secret ground, the secret of the ground, until one among them is seized with the desire to wake up. Then it stretches and pushes first timidly toward the sun, a lovely, small, harmless twig. It is a twig of radish or rosebush. We can let it grow as it wants, but if it is a weed, he must tear the plant immediately, as soon as it is recognized. Now there were terrible seeds on the planet of the little prince. Those were the seeds of baobabs. The surface of the planet was infested. But a baobab, if you take too long, can never get rid of it. It clutters the whole planet. It perforates the planet with its roots. And if the planet is too small and the baobabs are so numerous, they burst it. "It's a matter of discipline," the little prince told me later. When he finished his cleaning in the morning, it was necessary to carefully do the cleaning of the planet. He must regularly have effort to extract the baobabs as soon as they are distinguished from the roses that they took a lot when they are very young. It's very boring work, but very easy. And one day he advised me to apply myself to achieve a beautiful drawing to instruct the children at my home. If they travel one day, he told me, it could be useful to them. Sometimes he conveniently postpones his work. However, if it's the baobabs, it's always a disaster. I've known a planet inhabited by a lazy boy. He has overlooked 3 bushes. And upon the instructions of the little prince, I have drawn this planet here. I do not like to take the tone of a moralist, but the danger of the baobabs is little known, and the risks faced by those who get lost on an asteroid are so considerable that once I make an exception to my opposition. I say, "Children, watch out for the baobabs." It's to warn my friends about the danger they were in for a long time. Like myself, without knowing that I've worked so hard on this drawing here, the lesson I gave was worth. You might ask, why is not there in this book other drawings as grandiose as the drawing of the baobab? The answer is simple. I have tried, but I could not achieve. When drew the baobabs, I was animated by this sense of urgency. Ah, little prince. This is chapter 6. Ah, little prince, I have understood slowly, thus your little melancholic life. You have not had a long time for distraction like the softness of the sunsets. I learned this new detail in the fourth day in the morning when you told me, I like sunsets very much. Let's see a sunset. But it is necessary to wait. Wait what? Wait until the sun goes down. You got me very surprised aspect. You got very surprised aspect first. Then you laughed to yourself and you told me, I think I'm always home. Indeed. When it is noon in the United States, the sun, everybody knows it, sets in France. It would be enough if it was possible to go to France in 1 minute to watch the sunset. Unfortunately, France is too far. But on your small planet, all you would have to do was move your chair a few steps, and you would look at the dusk every time you wanted. One day, I saw the sunset 40 times, and a little later you added, you know, when we are so sad we love the sunsets. So the day of the 44 times you were very much sad, but the little prince did not answer. Chapter 7. The fifth day, always thanks to the sheep, this little secret of the little prince was revealed to me. He asked me with abruptness, without preamble, as the result of a problem meditated in silence for a long time. A sheep, if it eats bushes, it also eats flowers? A sheep eats anything it encounters. Even the flowers that have thorns? Yes. Even the flowers... Yes, even the flowers that have thorns. So the thorns, what are they for? I don't know. Then I was busy trying to unscrew a bolt too tight for my engine. I was very anxious because my breakdown seemed to be very serious, and the water to drink that was running out made me fear the worst. The thorns, what are they for? The little prince never renounced a question. Once he had asked, I was irritated by my bolt, and I answered anything. The thorns, they are insignificant. It's pure wickedness of the flowers. Oh. But after the silence, he threw me a kind of grudge. I don't believe you. The flowers are weak. They are naive. They reassure themselves as they can. They think they are terrible with their thorns. I answered nothing. At that time, I thought to myself, if this bolt still resists, I will blow it with a hammer. This little prince disturbed my thoughts again. And you believe that flowers? No. Pleasure? No. I don't believe anything. I said, anything? I am busy with serious things. He looked at me stunned. Serious things? He looked at me, my hammer in hand, and the fingers of full sludge leaning on an object that seemed to him very ugly. You sound like the grown-ups. It made me a bit ashamed, but ruthless, he added. You're confusing. You mix everything. He was really very irritated. He shook the golden hair in the wind. I know a planet where there is crimson, sir. He has never smelled a flower. He has never seen a star. He has never loved anyone. He has never done anything other than additions. And all day he repeats, like you, I'm a serious man. I'm a serious man. And it makes him swell with pride. But it is not a man, it's a mushroom. A what? A mushroom. The little prince was now pale with anger. There are millions of years that flowers produce thorns. There are millions of years that sheep eat flowers anyways. And isn't it serious to try to understand why they give themselves so much trouble to make spines that are never useful? Isn't the war among sheep and flowers important? Isn't it serious and more important than the additions of a fat red, sir? And if I know myself a unique flower in the wind, which does not exist anywhere else except in my world, and that a little sheep can annihilate suddenly, like that, one morning without realizing what it did, it is not that important. He blushed and then continued, if someone likes a flower that is only existing between millions and millions of stars, it is enough if he is happy when he looks at them. He says to himself, my flower is here somewhere, but if the sheep eats a flower, is it for him as if suddenly all the stars went out? And it is not as important at all. He could not say anything else. He burst out into sudden sobs. Night had fallen. I had dropped my tools. I laughed my hammer, my bolt, the thirst, and the death. There is on a star, a planet, mine, Earth, a little prince to console. I took him in my arms. I cradled him. I told him, the tree that you like is not in danger. I will draw you a muzzle to your sleep. I will draw you a muzzle to your sheep. I will draw you armor to your flower. I did not know what else to say. I felt very awkward. I didn't know how to reach it, where to find it. It's so mysterious, the country of tears. Chapter 8. I learned very quickly to know this flower better. There had always been, on the planet of the little prince, very simple flowers, decorated to a single row of petals, and that had no place, and that disturbed nobody. They appeared one morning in the grass, and then they went out at night. But this one had sprouted a day from a given seed, brought from no one knows where, and the little prince had monitored very closely this twig that did not resemble other twigs. It could be a new kind of baobab. But the bush quickly stopped growing and began to prepare a flower. The little prince, who watched the installation with a huge button, felt that he would get a miraculous appearance, but the flower did not finish preparing to become beautiful, sheltered in its green room. It chose its color with care. It got dressed slowly. It adjusted one by one its petals. It did not want to come out all wrinkled like the poppies. It didn't want to appear in the full radiance of its beauty. Hey, yes, this was very flirtatious. Hey, yes, it was very flirtatious. Its mysterious toilet lasted for days and days. And then, in one morning, precisely at the time of the rising of the sun, it showed up. And it, who had worked with such precision, says, yawning, I have just woken up. I beg your pardon. I'm still very disheveled. The little prince, then, could not contain his admiration. You are beautiful. Ain't I? The flower answered softly, and then I was born at the same time as the sun. Well, the little prince guessed that it was not too modest, but it was so moving. It's time, I believe, to have breakfast. It added soon. Would you have the goodness to think of me? And the little prince, confused, having been looking for a watering can of fresh water, served the flower. So it had quickly tormented him due to its vanity, a little touchy. One day, for example, talking about her 4 thorns, she told the little prince, the tigers can come with their claws. There are no tigers on my planet, the little prince had objected. In addition, the tigers do not eat grass. I am not a grass, the flower replied softly. Excuse me, I'm not afraid of the tigers, but I hate the airstream. Don't you have a screen? Hating the airstreams. It is not luck for a plant. The little prince noticed. This flower is very complicated. At night you will put me under a glass case. It is very cold at your house. It is incorrectly installed, the place I come from. But it was interrupted. It had come in the form of a seed. She could not know other worlds, humiliated to let itself be surprised by preparing so naive a lie. She coughed 2 or 3 times to put the little prince in the wrong. This screen? I was going to look for it. But you talked to me. Then it forced its cough to impose him regardless of the remorse. So the little prince, despite the goodwill of his love, had quickly doubted her. He had taken seriously the meaningless words that had become very unhappy. I should not listen to him, he told one day. He should never listen to the flowers. It is necessary to look at them and smell them. Mine perfumed my planet, but I did not know how to rejoice. This story of claws, which had annoyed me so much, should mend me. He told me yet, Then I have not known how to understand anything. I should judge it. I should judge it on its actions, not on its words. It embalmed me and lit me. I should never have ran away. I should have guessed its tenderness behind its poor tricks. The flowers are so contradictory, but it was too young to know how to love it. I think he took advantage. This is chapter 9. I think he took advantage for his escape of migration of wild birds. In the morning of the departure, he put his planet in order. He cleaned carefully his active volcanoes. He had 2 active volcanoes, and it was convenient to heat breakfast in the morning. He also had an extinct volcano, but he said, "You never know." Therefore, he also cleaned the extinct volcano. If they were well cleaned, the volcanoes burn slowly and regularly without eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are like chimney fires. Obviously, on our land, we are very much small to clean our volcanoes. That is why they cause us a lot of trouble. The little prince also extracts with a bit of melancholy the last sprouts of baobabs. He believes never have to return. But all those familiar works seemed that morning extremely smooth, and when he watered the flower for one last time and prepared himself to shelter it under its glass case, he discovered the wish to cry. "Goodbye," he said to the flower, but it did not answer him. "Goodbye," he repeated. The flower coughed, but it was not because of his cold. "I was a fool," it finally said. "Excuse me. Try to be happy." He was surprised by the absence of the approaches. He just stood there all bewildered, the glass case in the air. He did not understand this quiet sweetness. "But yes, I love you," said the flower. "You did not know. My fault. This has no importance, but you have been as stupid as me. Try to be happy. Let this glass case come quiet. I don't want it anymore. But the wind. I am not that cold. The fresh air of the night will be good for me. I am a flower. But the animals. I must support 2 or 3 caterpillars if I want to know the butterflies. It seemed to be so beautiful. Otherwise, who will visit me? You will be far, you. As for big animals, I fear nothing. I got my claws." And it showed naively her 4 thorns. Then she added, "Don't hang out like that. It's annoying. You have decided to leave. Go away." Because it did not want to see, because he did not want to see, because it did not want to see him see it crying. It was so proud a flower. Chapter 10. He was in the region of asteroids 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, 330. So he began by visiting them to seek for an occupation and to learn some things. The first was inhabited by a king. The king sat, dressed in purple and ermine, on a very simple, however majestic throne. "Ah, something is there," the king exclaimed when he saw the little prince. And the little prince asked himself, how can he recognize me once he has never seen me? He did not know that for the kings, the world is very simplified. All men are things. "Come closer, so that I can see you better," said the king, who was proud of finally being king for someone. The little prince looked for a place to sit, but the planet was all encumbered by the magnificent mantle of ermine. He remained standing, and as he was tired, he yawned. "He is against etiquette to yawn in the presence of a king," said the monarch. "I forbid you." "I can't stop myself," replied the little prince, all confused. "I had a long trip, and I haven't slept." "Then," said the king, "I order you to yawn. I have not seen anybody yawn for years. The yawns are curiosities for me. Come on, yawn again. That's an order. It intimidates me. I can't yawn anymore, the little prince said, all blushing. Hum, hum. The king replied, I am ordering you to yawn sometimes and sometimes too. He mumbled a little bit and seemed upset. Because the king was essentially concerned about his authority being respected, he didn't tolerate the disobedience. It was an absolute monarch. However, as he was very good, he was giving reasonable orders. If I ordered, he said fluently, if I ordered a general to change into a seabird, and if the general did not obey, it would not be the general's fault. It would be my fault. May I sit? The little prince asked timidly. I order you to sit, answered the king, who majestically brought back a piece of his ermine coat. However, the little prince was surprised. The planet was tiny. What could the king reign over? Sire, he said, I beg your pardon to interrogate you. I order you to interrogate me, the king hastened to say. Sire, what do you reign over? Over all, answered the king, with great simplicity. Over all. The king, with a discreet gesture, pointed to his planet, the other planets and stars. Over all that? The little prince said. Over all that, the king answered, because it was not only an absolute monarch, but it was a universal monarch. And do the stars obey you? Of course, said the king. They obey immediately. I do not tolerate indiscipline. Such power marveled by the little prince. If he had relaxed, he could have watched not 44 times, but 72, or even 100, or even 200 sunsets in one day without ever having to move his chair. And as he felt sad because of his memory of the small abandoned planet, he boldly asked a favor of the king. I would like to see a sunset. Do me a favor. Order the sun to lie down. If I ordered a general to fly from one flower to another like a butterfly, or read a tragedy, or change into a seabird, and if the general did not return the order, who would be in the wrong, him or me? That would be you, the little prince said firmly. Exactly. We have to ask everyone what everyone can give, resumed the king. Authority based on reason. If you order your people to throw themselves into the sea, they would make the revolution. I have the right to require obedience because my orders are reasonable. What about my sunset? Recalled the little prince, who never forgot a question once he had asked it. Your sunset, you'll get it. I'll demand it. But I will expect in my science of government that the conditions are favorable. When will it be? Inquired the little prince. Answered the king, who first consulted a large calendar. That will be that will be tonight, about 7:40, and you'll see how well I'm obeyed. The little prince yawned. He felt sorry for his missed sunset, and then he already was a little bored. I have nothing else to do, he said to the king. I'm going back. Don't go, answered the king, who was so proud to have a citizen. Don't go. I'll make you a minister. Minister of what? Of justice. But there is nobody to judge. Nobody knows, the king told him. I have not even toured my kingdom. I'm very old. I have no place for a carriage, and I get tired walking. Ah, but I have seen, said the little prince, who bent over to take a look at the other side of the planet. There is nobody there either. So you will judge yourself, the king answered. It is the most difficult. It is much more difficult to judge oneself than to judge others. If you succeed to judge yourself, well, you are truly a wise man. Me, said the little prince, I can judge myself anywhere. I do not need to leave here. Hum, hum, said the king. I believe that on my planet there is an old rat somewhere. I hear it at night. You can judge this old rat. You will condemn him to death from time to time. Thus its life will depend on your very justice. However, you will pardon it every time to save it. There is only one. I don't like the death penalty, the little prince answered, and I think I'm going. No, the king said. But the little prince, who had completed his preparations, would not hurt the old monarch. If your majesty wished to be promptly obeyed, you could give me a reasonable order. You could order me, for example, to leave within 1 minute. It seems to me that the conditions are favorable. The king hasn't answered. The little prince firstly hesitated. Then, with a sigh, he left. I make you my ambassador. Then the king hastened to shout. He had a great air of authority. Grown-ups are strange, the little prince said to himself during his trip. And that is the end of chapter 10 and chapter 11. I will read to Shoshana another night. Thanks.